Welcome to the afternoon session. I hope everybody had a good lunch and some North Carolina barbecue. I was too nervous to eat, so thanks for the 1 p.m. session, right? But anyway, thanks, and just again want to plug our sponsors. These folks have been great. You know, I can speak towards Pluralsight. I have a subscription. I love all the content they produce. You know, our tech system folks, they helped mark up my resume. I had lots of things that needed work. So yeah, please give these folks a minute of your time. We really appreciate it. Appreciate what they've done to make this conference possible. So about me, if you want to connect with me, there's a couple ways. So I started as a software developer out of school and did that for several years. And then actually, this is a bit of a homecoming for me. I worked at NC State College of Textiles for about 9 years. And so here is where I kind of was exposed to Active Directory, group policy, managing computing labs, deploying software. And somewhere in that time while I was at this role, PowerShell sort of kind of got some momentum. So I was able to take that sort of that programming, and along comes a really, you know, fleshed out scripting language. I was able to bring that together, and then I've since moved on. I work for the federal government now, thousands and thousands of computers, as you can imagine, and so being able to have a tool like PowerShell just has really helped develop my career. I'm sure you guys are here too because of the similar reasons, right? And so, you know, today I want to talk about working with Command Line Utility and making that work nicely with PowerShell, but I thought first thing I want to talk about is what are the awesome things like about PowerShell that we would even want to bring to a command line utility? So let's just remember why we like it. Like, why did you take a Saturday away from doing other fun things, right? It's because something about this thing has really made an impact on your ability to do your work or something. And so I think, I mean, we all have our war stories, but what I think it kind of comes down to is it amplifies our productivity, right? Before you had this tool, things might have been either almost impossible or sort of out of reach for you, and now you know, you might have even been that person who has gone to a colleague and be like, hey, something you want automated, right? Like once you kind of get this in your tool belt, it really makes us so much more productive. But the question is what is its sort of its secret sauce that is amplifying our productivity? And I think there's a couple things I've sort of honed in on that help do that. So one, it's predictable, right? There's a known naming convention, right? And commandlets follow that. The community, when we produce content, we try to follow that. And not only is everything verb-noun, there is a limited set of verbs that you're supposed to use, right? And so if we, you know, learn that to get something running, the verb is start. Well, now we know start process, start service, start VM, right? We as administrators, we don't have to think, is that begin, is that launch? No, it's start, right? So the designers sort of limited the namings, and then that makes us more productive because it's not as much of a guessing game as to what command I might want to use. So that's one, predictable. Discoverable, right? We know that, so we've found the commandlet that we're after, and now very reliably we can interrogate that command with get help, and we can find out, you know, detailed descriptions, parameter sets, examples. You know, I know help systems, I'm sure you have examples of commandlets you might have gotten that didn't have wonderful help, but by and large I think the vendor produced commandlets, the Microsoft produced commandlets, there's some really good help there. So again, you found your command, you ask help about it, and now you know how to use it right there. So you're productive. And then I think what brings this all together is that it's composable, right? So PowerShell, as we know, sits on top of .NET, and that's an object-based system. And being an object-based system gives it the advantage of the objects have properties. Those properties can be mapped pretty nicely into the next commandlet in the pipeline, right? That that maps into a parameter of the same name, and that maps into a parameter, right? And so now you can predict your commands, you can get help, and now with a couple of these tools in your toolbox, you can now compose and right there get the answers to the questions that you're trying to solve, right? And so this is sort of just a quick visual of it, right? These were the design patterns that I think that the PowerShell team really identified and prescribed to people who were making tools for PowerShell, right? And they're predictable, discoverable, and composable, right? And sort of your commandlets sort of bring that all together. So I think this crowd knows that, but I thought let's just do just a little bit of console playing around. By the way, I'm gonna mess up at the command line, but that's part of this, right? Is we can bang away, we can make mistakes, and that's cool. So, all right, so real quick, git command. That's not what I want. Right, you just see a bunch of verbs and nouns running across your screen, right? And then, as I mentioned, there is a prescribed set of verbs, right? Well, there's a commandlet that actually has those for you. And so we can say something like get command, group object by property verb, and we can then sort property count. So now you can, just in one quick glance, you can kind of get a view that, hey, the people that were making commands for PowerShell were following these verb-noun conventions, and you see, you know, in an object-based system here, that get and set are the most popular verbs, right? Because you got to get things, and then you might need to set properties on those things, right? And then, you know, I talked about help, right? So, I don't know, I just look on the screen and see if I see, you know, there's find command, right? So, presumably, I could do something like this. Get help, find command. Of course, there's some help. I think what most of us love doing is that. There's some examples that I could use. And I think everybody likes this one too, where they can show a little window and then search for something, you know, max. And it, right, so we have a nice help system. And in fact, I guess you could say I already showed an example of composability right here, right? I took the command, I piped that into group, I pipe that into sort, right? So there's some composability. I could do another example, like right here, I have a file called flavors, right? And that's ice cream flavors from a local shop and the days that they were served on, right? And so if, you know, if somebody asked me, hey, I'd like to see when the flavors that were berries were served and how often, you know, I can use PowerShell's composability to say where object dash property, property flavor, like some kind of berry, right? And then I can group that by property flavor, and then I can sort that by property of count. And right there, I just answered a question that might be really hard without composability, right? I just found out, and maybe I don't want to see all that stuff on the group, so I just say, now I'm going to select just what I want. I want to see name first, and then I want to see count. And so I could answer the business question of strawberry is the most popular flavor that is a berry, right? And so anyway, I think everybody knows these things, but what I wanted to affirm is that these are the things, the predictability, the discoverability, and the composability. These are the things that you'd like to have and bring with you when you're using a command line utility. Everybody following me? Okay. Yeah, okay. All right, so, but when we get to our legacy and vendor tools, what we end up with sometimes is a picture that looks like that. So the things that amplified our productivity are lost. You know, the naming convention that a vendor might have used isn't predictable for you or your team. Hit or miss on help, for sure. I think, you know, command line utility, even if they take a /? Sometimes you think they would, and then you just ran the command, right? And then composable, you know, this whole idea of this to that to that to that, you know, they're outputting text and taking that text and being able to pipe that into the next command so that it matches parameters. I mean, that's really not there. And so, you know, if you're productive with PowerShell, but then you've got vendors who aren't supplying commandlets, or maybe you even have a utility that you love, but it doesn't have these prescribed patterns, and you're going to lose some of that productivity. So what I'd like to do is kind of give an example of how we can bring these things to a command line utility with a few tricks, really. So what we're going to do together, and again, I know I'm going to botch this some, but it's part of the process. We're going to use PowerShell. We're going to do a little bit of parsing of console output. So what I've done is I'm picking a utility that any of us can download. It's something from sysinternals tools, so that y'all can play with the same utility I did if you want. So we're going to parse some console output. We're going to take that parsed output and turn that into objects. And then we're going to bring that all together by wrapping it up in a function. And I'm going to try to do this in the time that we have allotted, right? And so let's get at least where I can reference. Okay, so as I mentioned, I downloaded the sysinternals suites. You might be familiar with it, PS exec, those type of tools, right? So I'm gonna just show you one that. So I chose this one. It's disk usage. Actually, that's a great example of predictability not there. Like back in the 8.3 days, right? Real estate on naming was a premium. So you wouldn't make get disk usage, right? You'd make DU. And so that just is an example of, hey, that's not very predictable name. But PowerShell, we don't have that constraint, right? So anyway, this is the utility I was going to work with. If you see here, that's, you know, there is some help. So I would say this one has some discoverability, which is nice. I'm going to use the no banner option because we don't want that banner polluting our output. Okay, so let's just see what happens when we point to a folder, right? It gets some data back for us and calculates the size, right? So what I want to do is parse out those bits and turn that into variables. Right now, that's just text on my screen, but I'd like it to be eventually in an object. But first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of torpedo my own talk. If you notice up here, this particular command, the command line utility, has a -C option, which says I'll make CSV output for you, right? So if that's the case, you don't need to do all this parsing that I'm going to show you, right? Because PowerShell is going to make that really easy to both parse and make objects, bless you, in one move. So right here, I can say convert from CSV, and PowerShell just made that CSV output into an object, and you know, it's a custom object. I can say this. I can say get member, right, to look at the object that it produced for it, and you see up there, it created a custom object for us. One thing I'd want to point out to you is, do you see that everything here, all these node properties are strings? So let's just assign that to a variable so we have it. Custom obj equals. Okay, so custom obj. So I can now, it's really nice, I can reference file count, right? Whoops, custom. Oh, did I just assign it to get member? I did. Nice. That was not, that's the variable I want. Okay. Custom obj dot file count, right? It's 97. But we here know that's a number. We want to treat that like a number. But if I were to say plus 10, whoops, because it was a string, it just concatenated the 97 with 10 as strings, right? So what you would want to do is, you know, typecast this object into the data types that you really want it to be. And I'm just going to do it on this one just to show you that, yes, PowerShell did the heavy lifting and converted that to an object for us, but it wasn't a perfect conversion that you would actually want. You'd want these data types to be integers. So now, custom object dot file count plus 10, right? 107, right? So you need to do a little bit of manipulation even with PowerShell producing an object for you to get the data types the way you want to be friendly to the next person who's going to use your tool. They're getting integers, not strings, right, when it comes to numbers. So, okay, so let's just pretend for the demo today that we don't have the -C option, and we are faced with how do I don't want that get member again. How do I scrape out this data, right? And so let's do a little bit of that together. So I'm just going to assign that to a variable. Oh, you see that processing? So I think PowerShell, I don't want to detour too long on this, but PowerShell is seeing some output from that utility. It's getting in the error stream and it's polluting my output. I don't want that. So you can, on your own time, look at redirection operators, but we can say, let's redirect that processing thing to null, and you don't see it, right? So play with that on your own a little, but that's one way to get rid of some pollution from a command line utility that might be doing progress bar type stuff. Okay, so here we are. I've got result. What is nice here, that might just look like text, but PowerShell is giving me back an array of strings. And how do I know that? Well, if I just do this, index into my result, you see it just gave me that very first line. And how do I know that's a string? Well, I can say getType.name, and that's a string, right? So here's the beauty. We're PowerShell, we're on top of .NET, we're getting the benefit of .NET language, right? And so with that string comes all these beautiful methods that we can use to manipulate a string. So I can say getMember, member type of method, and here are all these things I can do to a string, right? Well, what I'm going to do for this is I'm just going to show you a few techniques to use those methods to basically, hey, how are we going to get 97 out of there, right? And assign that to a variable. Now, one thing I would say, Mark actually is going to have a talk on using regex. Regex is like not my strength. I can go to it when I need to, but I always have to reference a website or something like that. I'm a little better with the built-in .NET string manipulation. So I'm going to show you that, but if you're a regex kind of person, have at it. It's very powerful, and it can parse strings like nobody's business. But in my case, I'm going to use these built-in methods. Okay, so here's what I like to do. So substring is one of them, and if I could say I'm just going to throw a number. I'm going to take 10 characters in and over, and you saw it. It hopped over and then gave me the rest of that substring, right? What I like to do, I want my code to be readable. So here's a little trick I use. I come over here and I just grab that. I have to grab the 9 because it'll trim the spaces for me if I don't. So I just go back like this and I say that, and bam. I just said, give me the length of the stuff I don't want and return me what's left. And what's left is the number I'm after. And so when I do this, when I'm scraping the screen, you can kind of just look at my code and it sees, oh, I see he was scraping off files. Now he's scraping off directories, right? So that was one quick trick I wanted to show you that I think makes your code readable and gets you the data you want. Now again, what I would do there is I would, turn that into an int because that's what I would want that to be. But nevertheless, all right. So you say, all right, that's a nice trick, but how in the world are you going to get 946,176 without the bytes on the end and the comma in the middle and the size on disk in the front, right? That's a little more complicated. So let's go to that particular, let's see, 0, 1, 2, 3, was that 3? Okay. All right, so I'm going to use another method. I'm going to use index of, right? And I want to lop off dot bytes or space bytes, right? So I'm just going to say, where are you? Whoops, Where are you in my string? Okay, you're 21 characters out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say result 3 dot substring. I want to start from the beginning of my string and then the index of where that thing is that I want to lop off. All right, see you later, space bytes. All right, now, I don't want that comma. Oh, guess what? I can't use my dot, because I guess PowerShell doesn't really know that that's going to be a string. So what I do is I typecast what's coming back. I just do this so that I can get that back. I say string, and I put a parenthesis around it. And
R.
Oh, sting.
Sting.
Sting. All right, so did I already put that in parentheses? Dot, replace. I'm going to replace a comma with an empty string. All right, just got rid of that. All right, and then what's the last thing I'm going to do? That very first trick I showed you. I'm going to get rid of size on this. I'm going to grab that 9 just to... Oops, size on this dot length. Forgot to get, I don't want a string, I want the length of that string, right? Length. And there we go, guys. So with just a few tricks, right, I knew how to use substring. I knew how to use index of. I knew how to use replace. I scraped this data and got things out of it that I wanted, right? And again, really you would use the C and convert and let PowerShell do the lift for you. But if you had a utility that's putting out some output to the host, you could capture that in a variable and use some tricks to work through there and get out the data that you want. So again, I'm just showing you some things. I'm sure there's some folks in here that are regex folks that would have found easier techniques to get that data out. And by all means, do that, right?
Will int cast the number with the original number with the comma in it?
I think it'd probably fall over. I'm not sure. I mean, here. You want to see if this is okay?
No.
You want
946, comma
yeah.
176.
Whoops. Oh, 200. Or
Yeah.
there. That's more like right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well. So okay. Maybe that'd be easier, right?
It's pretty
Yeah.
it's pretty forgiving.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. So, all right. We've done the first thing, right? We've parsed the screen, and then so now what I'd like to do here. Let me see here. Get where I was. Okay. I've got it parsed, but remember we want objects, right? So I've got individual properties parsed out, but people in PowerShell want you to hand them an object and work with an object, right? So what I did is I just sort of coded up what we did here, and I'm using a hash table to do key value pairs of that parsing, right? So there's our parsing work, and here's a hash table, right? Okay, so now I've got key value pairs, but that's still not an object in the PowerShell sense that I want. So all you have to do with that is cast it, like we were casting the integer, cast it to an object, right? And now I've got this, you know, right? Now I've got this custom object, get member, right? And I can reference directory count the way I want. Object.directory count plus 10, right? Now it's right. So now I have an object. So okay, we've really worked through the first two parts of this. We've parsed, and now we've used a hash table to make that parse data key value pairs, and then we typecast that, and now we've got a PowerShell object. So now I'm starting to like make PowerShell people happy. You gave me an object, thank you. I know how to work with those. I know how to sort those. I know how to do things with objects, right? Okay, so then back to our, where were we? We were here, we did that, and now we're going to wrap it up in a function. Okay, so this is the part that's going to bring together all three of those ideas of predictability with a good name, discoverability with some help, and composability with the pipeline. All right, so this is what I do. I'm sure, again, there's a lot of different ways, but what I like to do is I use PowerShell ISC because it has a snippet in it that I like, which is, let's see, I just use an advanced function, right? So let's just copy that, and we'll go over to Visual Studio Code and get ourselves a new, all right. All right, so this template was nice enough to, I'm gonna do it on time, was nice enough to give us, it's encouraging us, put some help in there, make it a Verb-Noun, and have support for the pipeline, that begin, end, and process thing, right? So I don't want to take too much demo time on help, but let me at least just put in a little tiny bit of help in here. So obtain disk usage uses du.exe from sysinternals, right? Just a little bit of help in there so we can see the work that we're doing, right? And for our demo, I'll call it, let's just pretend that we were going to go on to make a whole sysinternal suite wrapper, and we were going to do a bunch of their utilities, so we can have this noun of every one of our commandlets is going to be prefaced with sysinternals, right? So in our case, I'm going to do get sysinternals disk usage, and that is going to serve as our predictable name, right? We're going to take the time wrapping all of those utilities up, and every one of our utilities is going to be sysinternals something, right? Okay, and then let me do a little bit more before I save this, right? I'm just going to have a path variable, a path parameter, because we're going to want to get disk usage on a given path. And yeah, let me do a couple more things just for the next part of our demo. If you're not familiar with how the pipeline works in these commandlets, I'm just going to touch on that a little bit so you can kind of see how the pipeline works in a custom built commandlet, right? So I'm going to say begin block, process block, end block. So I'll say it and then I'll demonstrate it, right? When this function is called, the begin block is going to get run once, and the end block is going to get run once, and the process block is going to get run for every object that gets piped into it. Let's just demo that before we add any code to this. So I'm just going to say save this. We're just going to go to Saturday. Just call this live demo, right? Okay, so let's go over here. Did I save it to the right directory? I did. Okay, we're going to dot source in our function. So now we should have a get help, get sysinternals disk usage, and there is the makings of our own custom commandlet, right? That has our help. That I want to show is this pipeline thing that I was the begin and end, right? So if I say get sysinternals disk usage, it doesn't do anything yet, right? Path C:, scripts, PSS Saturday, and I say verbose. All right, check it out. We went into our begin block, we also went into our process block, and we went into our end block, right? Not very exciting, but if I do, so let's say some paths equals get location. Let's do that. So I've got something with a path property on it, right? Now I'll do that one more time. Some paths plus equals another location. Oh boy, that was dumb. There we go. All right, now some paths has a couple objects, right? So let me go into here and let's take our some paths pipe it to our get sysinternals disk usage verbose. Check it out. This showed you how that we went into our begin block. I gave it 2 objects. Process block got run twice, and then we went to our end block. You know, I think the kind of things people typically use the begin and end block for might be for like maybe connecting to a database once, and then making sure you clean up that database connection at the end, and then you use that database connection for all your objects, something like that. But again, research that some on your own. I just wanted to give you the idea of this is how, when you make a custom thing, how your pipeline comes into play. So, okay, so we did all this hard work together of producing this, right? Of, hey, let's use this utility, let's parse out that data, and let's produce an object, all right? Well, let's take that hard work and let's drop it into our process block. I do not like the way that pasted in. Let's see here. Right? So all I've done now is I've used our stuff. It's every time we hit the process block, we're going to call that utility, and we're going to take the results of that, we're going to turn it into an object, right? So let's dot source in. All right, get sysinternals disk usage, C:\, autolab. Cool, right? We just got an object back. And we built that together, all right? And then as just a second ago, I had some pass, didn't I? Some pass, pipe to get sysinternals disk usage, verbose. Like right there, out of nowhere, we took a tool that like you had to use yourself, put it in a batch file, point to a bunch of directories, and we can pipe data into it and call it and get back objects, right? It's really cool. So here's the thing though. If I wanted to use something like get child item, directory, I just want directories, I want to recurse, C:, autolab, right? There's all these directories. I'd like to pipe that into the commandlet we just built together. But it bleeds red all over my screen. Why? Because when I do get child item, guess what I don't have? All this good stuff in here, I don't have something that is a path. I have full name, but that doesn't equal path. So PowerShell doesn't know what to do with that object when it pipes it into my commandlet. It doesn't know. So you know, you get into this situation where you'd like somebody to be able to use get child item, recurse, and pipe it into your thing to get disk usage, but they can't. And so they would have to do something like this. This is hard. I'm going to try to do it on the fly, right? You've heard of calculated properties. You'd have to do something like a select object. You make a hash table where I say name equals. All right, I'm going to make the name be path, right? And then I'm going to have an expression. Did I spell that right? Expression equals full name, right? So I'm going to get myself a path off. I'm going to take full name, make that renamed to path, and then I'm going to pipe that to get sysinternals disk usage. What did I do wrong, right? Path is not. Select object, property, name equals path. What's it telling me, folks?
It's in now return a third object that's your totals.
Here, so I won't worry too much. Did I give myself that example? No, let me see if I did that for myself. Well, of course not, right? Yeah, let me see. Cannot convert value. Path is not a directory. What did I do wrong? Name equals path. Expression equals.
It returned 2 results correctly first, right?
Well, third one just got to go.
Ryan?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Is it get child item that is returning files?
Okay. Thanks, guys.
You
Thanks.
forgot to put that, that's right.
Yeah.
You forgot to put that.
Speak up. No, I'm kidding. All right, thank you. Right, so there, right? So I was giving it files. Thank you, Jeremy, I think that was. All right, and so now that I'm just getting directories, I pipe that in, but hey, you know, look, y'all saw I just blew this. So you don't want to make the user of your commandlet have to try and calculate a property off of getChildItem into the name path, right? So one of the tricks I'm going to show you that we could do together is take advantage of this alias thing. So I can come in here, and I think I can just slam it right there and say alias full name. I think that just takes an array, right? So you can have multiple aliases for it. All right, we do that, and we dot source it, live demo, right? And so now we do this. Get rid of all of that, right? And it just works, right? So, hey, really, I was talking fast, kind of blew through it. Like, this was really what I wanted to kind of show you, the dilemma that we're solving, right? So we started, we want this, but we had that. We parsed, we made an object, we took a template of an advanced function, we gave it a good name, we gave it some lousy help, should give better help, and then we wrap that in a function, we put the working part of it in the process block, and we let the pipeline now do the hard work of moving that through our code, and we took something like this usage.exe and made it very PowerShell friendly for our audience, right? And so here's where we landed, right? We landed with, now I have predictability, discoverability, and composability, and a custom commandlet, right? And so I think what you're going to see, you do this with your sort of your vendor-based utilities. I mean, so the example I had that went a long way for us is we would need to release this custom software, and we had a database and a REST API that could produce the list of who we were trying to release that software to, but we had a command line utility. And so how do we hit that database, right? So we were able to wrap some PowerShell around that, hit the API, wrap up that command, feed in that data as parameters, and then make a call back to the API when all the work was done, right? And so this is the kind of thing I'm hoping that, you know, you'll come away with saying, there's utilities in my environment that are missing sort of this predictability, discoverability, and composability. And with just a few tools in your bag, you can sort of give that PowerShell power to it. Now, I mean, there's a lot of other things that we could do here, right? We could, you know, as you know, Jeremy pointed out, this needs to be a path. I could do some validation on this, which is really, really great, right? We could say validate, and then we could, let's see, anybody know the, right? So I could say test path, right?
Path.
Thank you. You know, and then path type, well, here I can do this. Path. Like that, and path type of leaf, I mean container or leaf, I think is the other one, right? And so then now I'm making sure I'm not getting bad data in by adding a little parameter validation. Another thing I could do, I'm hard coded in here, referencing this utility, right? So I don't know where somebody else might have that utility. I could parameterize the path to the utility. What I would caution you with in that is you wouldn't want somebody to accidentally point to another utility and then run your code as running that utility, doing something. So I would even put a little validate script on that where I said, get file hash, perhaps, of the actual utility. Make sure that it is the utility that you intended them to run. So, and of course you can flesh out the help, and you can take, I mean, again, like we did this together, right? We did that. Do this for your folks, you know? You're helping them tremendously. So we dot source that in. right? You just help them. They can take that and it just works. So again, the utility you might be using might have really lousy help. You learn it, you put the help that it should have come with, right? And now you've empowered your team. Your team doesn't have to know how to do all the things we just did together. They just know PowerShell, they know objects, and now you've wrapped up some utility that's important that was provided from your vendor, and you just made your team that much better, right? You know, we have the other thing that is a very easy thing that you can do. Add logging, right? So a certain utility doesn't come with good logging, you log for it, right? And so this is all the great things you can do with a few techniques of wrapping around Command Line Utilities with PowerShell, right? So hey, that's really the crux of my talk. If y'all had some questions or anything y'all wanted to go, I'd love to chat it up, yeah.
While you were developing this script, very early on, you had created an array of 2 different directories.
Oh, I did, yeah.
Can you still use that, since you've got a full name alias now? Could you pipe that?
Oh, sure.
Can you pipe that in, and will it still work if it's expecting to have a property called full name?
Well, full name's an alias. So it will take full name, but path is the name of my parameter. So path is still.
What happens if this and it's strings though?
Yeah, you've just got an object that's strict. That's.
Oh right, it's you mean if I just you want me to pass
Some
by
path.
type.
Dollar some pass, yeah.
Yeah. So you're just saying if I passed in.
Yeah, some paths. Look at dollar sum paths.
Is that what you're asking?
No. Look at dollar sum paths.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just pass that.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it already has the path.
Yeah.
they-
That's why that worked in the first place.
What happens if you pass the raw string? Does it work?
Right. Right. It doesn't like it.
Right.
You can, you know, so a concept I didn't cover, and I wouldn't say I'm the right person necessarily to cover it, but you see that I'm doing value from pipeline by property name. You can also do by type. I forget what the name is.
By value, by type, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
And you
Value from
probably
right.
just put a comma there.
Right. So in that case, you're gonna get, you know, you're asking PowerShell to inspect the data type and then map that into the correct parameter, and that's cool.
I thought it was an array of strings, but no, it's an array of properties.
Yeah. So yeah. And notice, guys, to get the one thing that I do also hope you take away when I did the little demo of hey how begin, end, and process works. You know, you hear about the pipeline all the time. And I thought, oh, that's out of reach for me. I don't know how to use that pipeline myself. I mean, if you saw, I just took that template and plugged in some code in the process block, and all of a sudden I had a tool that could use the pipeline. And then with the trick of the alias, now I can use get child item. I can interrogate my entire my disk with the directory and pipe that into a tool. And so we just, I would say, amplified the productivity of the disk usage utility with all the goodness of PowerShell.
Does your script still works without the pipeline?
Oh yeah.
What happens if you pass?
Yeah,
it
sure,
some
right?
back?
I mean, so yeah, get sysinternals path C:, scripts, right? Oh, wow. Why didn't I? Can't validate that. Oh, it's not a leaf. I was messing with our code, so let me get that out of there. I wasn't.
Just comment there.
Yeah, thanks. Right. Yeah.
And now, what happens if you, for path, you put in some paths? That variable, what happens?
Oh, well, you know, that's
parameters
it's not gonna like it because it's an array, right? But if I do, you know, right? Now, if I wanted, look, if I wanted, I could make this instead of taking, I could make that be I should have made that a string, right? Sorry, should have done that. So right now, it's just taking a single string, right? I could have said it'll accept an array of strings. and then done exactly what you said, where then I already have an array of strings.
So then, in other words, if you save that, it should work.
Oh, live demo, right? Okay, so what I would need, it wouldn't work because what I need to do here is put a for each object around it. So now, even if I did that, that's cool because then with the process block, you're only getting one at a time. So for each object would just be one object. So yeah, I could, if I wanted, either just rely on the pipeline to do the work for me, or I could have in my process block a for each object around that, and it would work just fine.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, how we doing?
Sorry.
Just a few minutes left.
It broke. I'm sorry. Sure.
Yeah. Any other questions? I guess what I would just say, if you take nothing else away, just recalling that these things, that this is really the secret sauce of PowerShell, right? This predictability, this discoverability, and composability. If you keep those in mind, when you go to build some of your own tools, and you're saying, hey, these are the things I want to bring to those tools, however your tool comes about, bring these things with it. And then the people who are using your tools are just going to kind of get it because they have come accustomed to the PowerShell patterns, right? So those are the prescribed patterns. Apply them to that thing, and you've just already made other people more productive. So yeah, cool. Well, thanks for your time.
Did this recording stop?
Still got 3 minutes.
All right. So I just want to let people know we're going to make the last call on birds of a feather. So when you leave here, you have a few minutes. If you want to participate in that, head over to the board, put the check marks next to the things you're interested in, or if there's a time